Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. Democrat Phil Murphy is narrowly re-elected governor of New Jersey. He defeated Republican Jack Ciattarelli in an unexpectedly tight race, becoming the first Democratic governor in decades to win a second consecutive term there. President Biden warning Democrats if they don't want to see more tight races, they'll have to produce results, starting with his social spending plan. Others offer a different solution. Supreme Court justices are hearing arguments against a New York State gun law. This case could have broad impacts on gun restrictions across the nation and become the most significant ruling on gun rights in a decade. And the head of the FAA testifies before the Senate Transportation Committee. Airplane manufacturer Boeing continues to face scrutiny following 2 deadly crashes. New vaccine mandates by January 4th. Companies with over 100 employees will have to ensure that their workers are vaccinated or tested weekly for COVID-19. And the Biden administration plans to issue big fines to companies that don't comply. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration will penalize companies as much as $14,000 per violation. In the latest version of the mandate, employees can undergo weekly testing instead of vaccination. The rule is expected to immediately be challenged in court by business groups and Republican states when it goes into effect. A separate rule requires all workers in health facilities that provide Medicaid and Medicare services be fully vaccinated. There's no testing option, but there's a chance for employees to receive religious or medical exemptions. New Jersey Democratic Governor Phil Murphy will hold on to his seat, edging out former Republican Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli by a narrow margin. The gubernatorial race remained neck and neck until the last minute.
Thank you, New Jersey!
New Jersey incumbent Governor Phil Murphy narrowly won re-election on Wednesday, becoming the first in his party in 44 years to secure back-to-back second terms.
I am humbled to be the first Democratic governor re-elected in the great state of New Jersey since my dear friend, the late Governor Brendan Byrne, did this in 1977.
The closer-than-expected race ended with him fending off his Republican opponent, Jack Ciattarelli, a former assembly member. The Associated Press called the race Wednesday evening. Incomplete ballot count showed Murphy won 50% of the vote, compared with 49% for Ciattarelli. According to local report, Ciattarelli was leading through the night of the election, but Murphy closed the gap as more results came in after 11:30 p.m. Ciattarelli's campaign spokeswoman, Stami Williams, posted a tweet disputing the media's early call, calling the move irresponsible. Murphy pledged to listen and work for all of the state's residents as he addressed supporters late Wednesday.
If you want to understand where America is heading, look to New Jersey. And if you want to be governor of all of New Jersey, you must listen to all of New Jersey. And New Jersey, I hear you.
He won among mail-in ballots by a wide margin, even in Republican-leaning counties like Monmouth. New Jersey Secretary of State Tahisa Wei said on Monday more than 200,000 New Jerseyans voted in person, while nearly 500,000 voted by mail. Murphy campaigned on policies involving affordable public education and Democrat-backed green policies, but he was criticized for tax raises, mask mandates for children, and other issues.
Activists in Minneapolis are still pushing for police reform, even after voters rejected the plan to replace the local police department in Tuesday's vote.
We here, and we ain't going nowhere.
Despite the failure of a ballot proposal to reshape a local police department, activists in Minneapolis Wednesday vowed to keep pushing for change. The Yes for Minneapolis campaign is the driving force behind the failed policing measure. At an election night party downtown, its spokeswoman insisted the vote wasn't a total defeat.
Because the reality is that the people of Minneapolis are deserving of expanded public safety.
The ballot measure evolved from the defund the police movement sparked by the death of George Floyd in the city last year. It proposed replacing the Minneapolis Police Department with a new Department of Public Safety, which would operate with less reliance on armed officers. But many disagreed with the concept. One opponent of the measure noted that both sides want reform and that the no vote didn't mean people aren't supportive of change.
The no vote means is now it's time to get to work and work with our police chief and figure out how we're going to make sure that we are safe in Minneapolis.
A sociology professor at the University of Minnesota says she believes police reform of some kind is possible.
All of the advocacy organizations that have come together, all of the residents who support it, none of that disappears today because of what happened yesterday. And so I very much expect that policing in Minneapolis will continue to shift.
More than 56% of voters rejected the proposal on Tuesday, the major criticism being the lack of concrete plans for the new agency.
Now we turn to Virginia's governor race. Glenn Youngkin's victory over Terry McAuliffe has some lawmakers celebrating and others scrambling to find answers. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the results won't impact her party's agenda. Yet House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy suggests the outcome may foreshadow a trend in future elections. Republican underdog Glenn Youngkin has won the race for Virginia's governor. The businessman beat incumbent Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe on Tuesday. Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia, says Democrats passing their agenda sooner could have helped McAuliffe.
Congressional Dems hurt Terry McAuliffe. I mean, I'm going to be blunt. It's humbling to say it, but if we had been able to deliver infrastructure and reconciliation in mid-October, he could have sold universal pre-K, affordable child care, infrastructure, creating jobs.
Yet Biden sees it differently.
I think we should have passed before Election Day, but I'm not sure that I would be able to have changed the number of very conservative folks who turned out in the red districts who were Trump voters, but maybe.
Democrat Senator Dick Durbin says the results are a message for his party to get the job done and pass their agenda.
I don't want to point a finger of blame, but I will tell you this. There's no time left. This warning to us came early enough for us to do something about it. Now we have to respond.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the GOP victory won't change the Democrats' approach.
People have spoken with respect to his office, and they're sad. Terry was a great leader, and he was a great governor of the state.
Does it change the agenda for the House?
No.
On the other side of the aisle, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy suggests more Democrats are vulnerable after McAuliffe's fall, and he has a message for congressional Democrats.
Today is a wake-up call for Washington Democrats to abandon the partisanship, the extremist agenda of Washington-based programs that cost trillions of dollars and don't have programs that nobody even wants.
Virginia's own representative highlighted McAuliffe's stance on schools. The governor had in 2016 prevented parents from removing sexually explicit books from schools.
Yesterday sent a message not just across the Commonwealth of Virginia, but across the nation, that it's parents that matter, that it's parents that should be in charge of their children's destiny in school systems, that it's about small businesses and empowering them to make sure that they continue to build this economic engine that we know right now has been stifled.
The result could signal challenges for Democrats in the midterms next year. That's on top of the fact that the president's party usually loses seats in the midterm elections. President Biden says Democrats need to produce for the American people if they want to win moving forward, and they can start by passing his spending agenda. NTD's Jessica Beatty has the story.
President Biden Wednesday, reflecting on Democrats' setbacks in Tuesday's elections, said Democrats need to produce results on a spending agenda if they want to win moving forward.
I think we should produce for the American people, and that's why I'm continuing to push very hard for the Democratic Party to move along and pass my infrastructure bill and my Build Back Better bill.
Biden said he thinks things will go better for Democrats if he can sign his agenda into law. But centrist Democrat Joe Manchin has another take. He says he thinks the solution is to start working together and for Democrats to listen to people back home.
I've been listening to the people in West Virginia. They're concerned about inflation, and they know that higher utility bills are coming at them this winter, and we need to be cognizant of that. We just can't just say, well, we can do this, this, or this, and it'll take care of it.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell echoing the sentiment, saying the election results were in large part a referendum on national issues.
Democrats should listen to the voters. Drop this reckless taxing and spending spree.
Meanwhile, Biden Wednesday denied reports that his administration is planning to pay $450,000 to illegal immigrants who were separated from their families under Trump.
That's not going to happen.
Late last month, the Wall Street Journal, citing anonymous sources, said the administration is planning payments up to $1 million per family to resolve lawsuits. The ACLU is representing some of the families. It responded to Biden's comments, saying President Biden may not have been fully briefed about the actions of his very own Justice Department. But if he follows through on what he said, the president is abandoning a core campaign promise to do justice for the thousands of separated families. We reached out to the White House for comment, but didn't hear back. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announced the Fed would ease up on some of the massive help it's been providing to the economy. That's amid concerns about rising inflation, but he fell short of predicting a coming rate hike.
Today, the FOMC kept interest rates near zero, and in light of the progress the economy has made toward our goals, decided to begin reducing the pace of asset purchases.
The Federal Reserve took the first steps Wednesday to reducing the massive help it's been providing the economy ever since the health crisis knocked millions of Americans out of work last year. Fed Chief Jerome Powell announced the Fed will reduce its $120 billion monthly bond buying program by $15 billion each month, beginning sometime in November, but left the door open to speed that up if inflation continues to run hot. The central bank took notice of the biggest price surge in decades and the impact that's having on everyday Americans.
We understand the difficulties that high inflation poses for individuals and families, particularly those with limited means to absorb higher prices for essentials such as food and transportation. Our tools cannot ease supply constraints. Like most forecasters, we continue to believe that our dynamic economy will adjust to the supply and demand imbalances, and that as it does, inflation will decline to levels much closer to our 2% longer run goal.
Central banks like the Fed usually boost interest rates in order to get inflation under control. But even though pocketbooks are getting hit hard right now, Powell is betting inflation will start to cool sometime next spring or summer, and thus a rate hike now would be premature.
We don't think it's time yet to raise interest rates. There is still ground to cover to reach maximum employment, both in terms of employment and in terms of participation.
Wall Street appeared to buy the Fed's game plan for now, with stocks rising to fresh record highs.
The Supreme Court is starting to hear arguments challenging a New York State gun law. The case could impact gun restrictions across the nation. The plaintiffs say New York's concealed carry gun permitting system violates the Second Amendment. Here are the details.
New York state law says that in order to get a permission to carry concealed handguns in public, residents have to show proper cause for doing it, including an actual rather than speculative need for self-defense. The Supreme Court has to decide whether the state is violating the Second Amendment by denying people's applications.
Just to follow up on the other questions, why isn't it good enough to say I live in a violent area and I want to be able to defend myself?
It doesn't mean that there is the right to self-defense for celebrities and state judges and retired police officers, but pretty much not for the kind of ordinary people who have a real felt need to carry a gun to protect themselves.
2 gun owners at the National Rifle Association filed the lawsuit. New York Solicitor General Barbara Underwood is defending the law in front of the Supreme Court. She says there's the need to regulate concealed guns to promote public safety.
How many illegal guns were seized by the New York Police Department last year? Do you have any idea?
I don't have that number, but I'm sure it's a substantial number.
But the people, all these people with illegal guns, they're on the subway, they're walking around the streets, but the ordinary, hardworking, law-abiding people I mentioned, no, they can't be armed.
The state grants unrestricted concealed carry licenses more freely in rural areas than in densely populated New York City.
If the purpose of the Second Amendment is to allow people to protect themselves, that's implicated when you're in a high crime area. It's not implicated when you're out in the woods.
Well, I think it is implicated when you're out in the woods. It's just a different set of problems. I mean, you're deserted there, and you can't, and law enforcement is not available to come to your aid if something does happen. But
well, how many muggings take place in the forest?
The case could be the most significant ruling on gun rights in a decade, but it's not clear when the High Court is going to rule on it.
The mother of the admitted killer in the Bali Suitcase murder says she wants custody of her granddaughter. She spoke at the airport the same day her son's ex-girlfriend Heather Mack arrived in the U.S.
I'm Stella's grandmother, and I want custody of my granddaughter, okay? The question is, who's going to stop Heather Mack? Who's going to do it? Who's going to be the one? Because there was a circus in Indonesia, and I don't want there to be a circus in America. Tommy Schaefer is the father of Stella Schaefer, and he has a voice. He's still in prison, of course. I'm his voice. I'm Stella's voice, and I'm my son's voice.
Heather Mack served time for helping her ex-boyfriend Tommy Schaefer murder her mother. Heather and her mother were on vacation in Bali when Schaefer arrived. Mack's mother was then found dead in a suitcase. Heather Mack had been released from Indonesian prison early for good behavior, but her ex-boyfriend and the father of her child is still there serving time. FBI agents took Mack into custody upon arrival in Chicago. Mack is the daughter of acclaimed composer James L. Mack. She is suspected of helping to kill her mother so that she could access the inheritance left to her by her late father. She gave birth to her daughter Stella in prison. The head of the FAA testified before the Senate Transportation Committee on Wednesday. It's part of the ongoing scrutiny of Boeing following 2 deadly crashes. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
The manufacturer of the 737 MAX jetliner is still under review, following 2 crashes that killed 346 people. Federal Aviation Administration Chief Steve Dixon testified before the Senate Transportation Committee Wednesday.
As the head of the FAA, safety is my North Star. One of the first things I did as FAA administrator was to make it clear that we are the regulator, and that included resetting our relationship with Boeing. I said that we would continue to exert a high level of scrutiny across the board.
A Boeing MAX jet crashed in 2018 in Indonesia and 2019 in Ethiopia. The pilots tried unsuccessfully to regain control, and both planes went into nosedives minutes after taking off. The FAA is taking more control over the certification process.
I can say with confidence that we are doing more for certification oversight, and we are doing it more systematically than we were this time last year. For one, we are delegating fewer responsibilities to manufacturers and demanding more transparency from them.
During the hearing, committee chairwoman Maria Cantwell emphasized the need for more oversight over Boeing.
The law that we implemented was a clear course correction. It said that we needed to have a stronger FAA oversight, the people in place to do that job, and to hold manufacturers accountable. Directing the FAA and making sure that that job is done is critical.
Congress passed legislation advancing FAA oversight of aircraft manufacturers, requiring disclosure of critical safety information and providing protections for whistleblowers.
It is really important, within the agency that we are transparent. The Boeing is not the same as it was 2 years ago, but they have more work to do.
Senator Cantwell said she plans a hearing and a report on aviation whistleblowers before the end of the year. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Air Force Watchdog says there will be no penalty for U.S. airstrike that killed innocent people in Afghanistan. The strike took place after the suicide bombing during U.S. troop evacuation.
Individuals involved in the strike interviewed during this investigation truly believed at the time that they were targeting an imminent threat to U.S. forces. Regrettably, the interpretation or the correlation of the intelligence to what was being perceived at the time in real time was inaccurate. In fact, the vehicle, its occupant, and contents did not pose any risk to U.S. forces. The investigation found no violation of law, including the law of war, did find execution errors confirmed by combined with confirmation bias, and communication breakdowns that regrettably led to civilian casualties.
The airstrike killed a longtime employee of an American humanitarian organization and 9 of his family members. Among them were 7 children. Saeed's review said the incident must be considered in the context of the moment. U.S. forces were under stress and were flooded with information about threats to troops and civilians at the Kabul airport. The suicide bombing days before killed 13 U.S. troops and at least 60 Afghans. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti is in isolation in a hotel after testing positive for COVID-19. Garcetti was attending the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow when he was notified about his diagnosis. He spoke at the event Tuesday and had met with other mayors worldwide over the past few days. According to Garcetti's office, the 50-year-old is fully vaccinated and is, quote, feeling good. The mayor is President Biden's pick as ambassador to India. His nomination remains unconfirmed by the Senate. And just a little further north in San Jose, some locals gathered with a message, this time for the government. NTD's David Lamb went to find out about what it's all about.
This is one of the many rallies going on today, and here in the Bay Area at City Hall in San Jose, people are calling for more transparency behind the vaccines and the vaccine mandates.
My sign is Make California Free. We need freedom. Having no freedom is illegal.
Some attendees called for walkouts.
If we don't question, we just let the government or the social media or boss or the businesses tell us.
Others shared about vaccine side effects.
People are taking them because they're believing the government. They're not looking at the data.
One attendee said her mother and 2 other family members have passed away after getting vaccinated.
I have clients that have taken the vaccine, and especially the Moderna, their hair's falling out now. And all of them have complete anxiety.
But my granddaughter, who is only 7 years old, she herself has voiced to me that she does not want the shot.
And a vaccine. The biggest agenda that people need to be concerned about is these health passports or vaccine passports.
More of these walkout protests are planned for the remainder of the month. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up, the 50th TCS New York City Marathon is set for this Sunday, November 7th. Around 33,000 runners will race through all 5 boroughs of the city and end up in Central Park. Find out more in just a minute here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
The TCS New York City Marathon is back this year after a virtual run last year due to the pandemic. The race will take place this Sunday, November 7th. Let's look at what's in store this year.
This year's TCS New York City Marathon will be the 50th anniversary of the event. Race officials and city leaders took part in the ceremonial painting of the finish line Wednesday.
Welcome to the Blue Line painting ceremony for the 2021 TCS New York City Marathon. This blue line is going to trace the entire 26.2-mile course across the 5 boroughs and end up right here at the finish line in Central Park.
The champion from the 2009 race and an Olympic silver medalist from 2004 called it an honor to paint the finish line.
Marathon is a metaphor for life, and this is the resilience where people are coming back, and New York always is resilient, and it shows. And the people here coming now, and the weather is great, and because of COVID, but now people are coming. That energy is coming out. As a spectator, as an athlete, as a community, as a sponsors, it's wonderful.
Nearly 16,000 runners finished their own course in the virtual run last year. This year, about 33,000 runners are expected to take part, but there will be pandemic restrictions.
So we've added an hour and a half to our event, 30 minutes earlier, hour later. Our field size is about 40% less, so we'll ultimately create some space amongst the athletes. All athletes are going to require one of two things: proof of vaccination or proof of negative test 48 hours before the race day, so not the 72. Every single participant will be screened and checked before running on race day.
The race director at New York Roadrunners said the marathon signifies the true accomplishment of overcoming hardship.
This year's marathon will show the toughness of New York, the grit of New York, the determination of New York, the courage of New York. We've seen this before in '76, in '01, and in 2012.
He says coming out of such a pause in life is what the city needs.
Coming out of such a pause in life, again, very similar to what we experienced in '01 after 9/11. The marathon coming back after that event was the shot in the arm that the city needed, that sense of life and energy that the city needed, a connection and togetherness that the city needed.
The New York City Police Commissioner also expressed relief that the event is returning.
We remember what happened last year. It's so fitting that we're here in this park where so many people came out for the first time just to get a little peace. And then I would take away when they said last year's race virtual. Can we put to bed virtual anything in 2022? And I think we would all be happy.
The marathon has grown from a local road race in Central Park 50 years ago to the world's largest marathon.
New York City is getting ready for the holiday season. Times Square is unveiling 4 giant snow globes inspired by some of Broadway's most popular musicals. NTD's Chenny Wu has the details.
Times Square is shaking up the holiday season with giant snow globes.
The unveiling of the globes celebrates the return of Broadway after closing for 18 months due to the pandemic.
Times Square was symbolic of the pause in the pandemic, and a robust, filled Times Square is symbolic of our resolve and our recovery.
The globes feature 4 Broadway shows that are on stage now: The Lion King, Dear Evan Hansen, Wicked, and Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. The unveiling included a live performance from entertainer Mark Natl. And fans got to meet members of the vocal group The Temptations. Tourists and New Yorkers can catch the festive globes on display until December 26th.
And they're even giving out free donuts. Chenny Wu, NTD News, New York.
Amazon says we should speak less to Alexa. It's not that its voice recognition system is overworked. Amazon says soon you won't need to speak to it as often because it will probably already know what to do before you ask. NTD's Faye Corder explains.
The senior vice president of Alexa said at the Web Summit Tuesday that Amazon wants you to talk less to Alexa.
Amazon's Tom Taylor.
Tech giants are continuously improving their AI assistants, and the goal is for them to understand and anticipate what humans want and when.
We believe that the future of consumer technology is ambient intelligence, which uses AI to weave together devices and intelligent services
Taylor said that today there are more than 130,000 Alexa skills, and the device will be able to take actions on your behalf. Some consider ambient intelligence the next step for artificial intelligence. It brings together sensors and devices that are embedded in our environment with AI. This way, the environment becomes intelligent and context-aware. Experts in the industry predict that AI democratization, or self-service AI, is becoming increasingly important.
In parallel to the rise of this self-service AI, which customers directly tailor the AI to their needs, we're at the beginning of a second big trend. AI becoming less reactive to customer requests and more proactive on its own.
Alexa will be able to more actively learn from customers' feedback signals. For example, when customers repeat their requests because of an error in interpretation. Amazon expects many different AI assistants in the future for different roles in different contexts. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
Maryland Air National Guard carried out a 16-aircraft mission generation yesterday. The readiness exercise showcased the agility and rapid mobility of U.S. air power. The exercise took place at Warfield Air National Guard Base in Middle River, Maryland. It involved every A-10C Thunderbolt II aircraft assigned to the 104th Fighter Squadron. After technicians prepared the aircraft, pilots started their engines and started taxiing. They formed a half-mile-long line before getting into a tight formation on the runway. In the Air Force, the process is dubbed the Elephant Walk, a term that originated during World War II. Brigadier General Paul D. Johnson, the base's commander, said the Air Force is ready to answer the nation's call to defend the country from its adversaries. He added, "We know they are watching, so it is good for them to know we can bring the fight at any time." The European Parliament has taken a new step in showing its support for Taiwan. A delegation of the members of Parliament is making their first official visit to the island. They spoke highly of Taiwan's democracy. The visit comes amid threats from the Chinese regime. NTD's Joy Duguid has the story.
A delegation of the European Parliament arrives in Taipei. It's the first official visit of an EU delegation to Taiwan. Taiwanese Premier Su Cheng-chang said the visit signifies stronger ties with Europe amid tensions between Taipei and Beijing.
Although we are geographically very far away, between our two sides we share the same values, such as freedom, democracy, human rights and rule of law, as well as the insistence of supporting free trade and fighting disinformation. In those regards, we are actually very close.
The delegation is composed of 13 members of the EU's Committee on Foreign Interference in Democratic Processes. Chair of the committee, Raphael Glucksmann, said their visit shows Taiwan is high on the agenda in Brussels and for every member state.
And I think that the world did not understand enough still how difficult and how courageous it is to build a democracy while being under threat by an authoritarian regime like the one in Beijing.
Glucksmann says they also came to thank Taiwan for what it is doing for democracy worldwide.
You have shown that in this region, democracy can flourish, and that authoritarian regimes are not the future.
In October, the EU Parliament overwhelmingly voted to pass a resolution calling on the EU to begin to establish a bilateral investment agreement with Taiwan. The resolution also noted the EU greatly values security in the Taiwan Strait and called on China to put an immediate end to its ongoing intrusions into Taiwan's airspace. During their 3-day visit, the European delegation will also meet with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
China's internet censorship is in full swing. That's after a famous tennis player accused a former Communist Party official of sexual assault. NTD's Evelyn Lee has more of the details.
First, we turn to a sexual assault allegation that shocked China's internet users. It's causing waves because the country's party officials have rarely been called out by alleged victims for this kind of abuse. And in this case, the accuser is one of China's biggest sports stars, Peng Shuai. She was world's #1 tennis doubles player in 2014. As for the accused, he used to be one of China's most powerful men, the country's vice premier. His name is Zhuang Gaoli. In a social media post, Peng accused Zhang of assaulting her about 3 years ago. She says the two then had a 3-year relationship afterwards. Peng is 35, Zhang is in his 70s. Peng wrote that she didn't keep any evidence of the assault and only has her real experience, adding, "I know for someone as powerful as you, Vice Premier Zhang, you said you're not afraid. But even doing this is like hitting a rock with an egg or moth to flames courting self-destruction. I'll tell the truth about you." China's internet censorship mechanism soon took action. Peng's social media post was removed within minutes, and internet users can't comment on the older posts on her account. In the meantime, Chinese media is staying silent, and the internet surge of related coverage on China's largest search engine Wednesday returns no result. In a press conference, a reporter asked China's foreign ministry about the censored allegation.
The allegations and subsequent discussion of them have all been censored from the internet. Do you have any comment to make on the allegations or on the censorship?
And China's foreign ministry spokesperson responded.
I have not heard of this issue. This is not a question related to foreign affairs. Next question.
Aside from all the buzz, a China observer says it's no coincidence that Peng chose this timing to break the news.
I think she has her eyes on the political infighting between party elites, and for her, it's an opportunity.
Sheng says bringing out the allegation at this time is safer for Peng Shuai because Zhang belongs to a political faction that's rival to party leader Xi Jinping, and a sexual assault allegation would be useful for the Xi faction to crack down on its opposing faction. And the timing is important because all the party elites are expected to convene for a big political meeting in November. And in Chinese Communist Party history, leaders have used big meetings like these to consolidate their power.
Still to come, France lets a British fishing boat leave its territory without a fine after the country decides to start fresh negotiations on post-Brexit fishing rights. One of the largest sales of artworks of its time is the heart of one of Germany's most significant museums. 200 years later, parts of the collection are once again on display. That and more on NTD News.
The worst genocide in human history also destroyed the lives of thousands of Jewish survivors still suffering today.
God calls on people who believe in Him to act on His word. Comfort my people.
Especially during this holiday season of Hanukkah.
When I come here and I sit with Lily, I realize what she needs right now is food.
These elderly Jews are weak and they're sick. They're living on $2 a day. This now is how God's children are living. Take this time to send a survival food box to these forgotten Jews.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews urgently need your gift of $25 now to help provide one survival food box with all of the essentials they critically need for their diet for 1 month. Your special holiday gift will provide everything they need to celebrate the miracle of Hanukkah.
This is the first time in over 70 years that she has anything to do with faith.
The communists came and wiped it out.
Your grandparents?
And now we're coming to her and we're saying, it's okay to have faith. It's okay to light the Hanukkah candles.
For just $25, you can help supply the essential foods they desperately need for 1 month.
For over 35 years, this trusted ministry has given Christians like me a way to tangibly bless Jewish people who are in need throughout the world.
God tells us to take care of them, to feed the hungry. And I pray Holocaust survivors will be given the basic needs that they so desperately pray for to survive.
The flagship of the U.S. Sixth Fleet, USS Mount Whitney, crossed the Bosporus Strait today. It joins NATO activities in the Black Sea. The arrival of the U.S. warships in the region sparked anger in Moscow following the Kremlin's complaints about NATO activities near its borders. On Tuesday, Russian Black Sea Fleet said the naval forces practiced destroying enemy targets and activated air defense systems upon the arrival of the U.S. warships. USS Mount Whitney joins the U.S. destroyer USS Porter, which entered the Black Sea last week for a routine patrol. Despite criticism from Russia, the NATO alliance says it's determined to reinforce the security of member states close to Russia. A British scallop dredger, impounded by French authorities, sailed out of the French port of Le Havre on Wednesday. It ends a standoff that has aggravated tensions between Paris and London over post-Brexit fishing rights.
The Cornelis Gert Jan was seized by French authorities last week and accused of fishing for scallops without a proper license. On Wednesday, a French court overturned a demand that the ship's captain pay a $174,000 bond for its release. Following the ruling, a ship tracking website showed the trawler leaving Le Havre and heading away from the French coast. The lawyer for the Irish captain, John D. Ward, said the vessel had been a pawn in a wider tug-of-war between Paris and London.
He's clearly in the middle of a political game because we can see that an entire story has been made around this case, although it's a relatively banal one involving fishing activity in a supposedly forbidden zone.
This week, France and Britain came to the brink of a cross-channel trade war, with Paris alleging that London had not honoured a post-Brexit deal on access to British fishing grounds. President Emmanuel Macron warned France would retaliate by stepping up checks on trucks coming from Britain. He also said France would ban British trawlers from docking in French ports. But at the last minute, France pulled back and now says it will make a fresh attempt to negotiate a solution with the UK. Senior British and French officials are due to meet for talks on the issue on Thursday.
Revenues increase, but secrecy remains. Pfizer's vaccine contracts with governments are a mystery for the most part. A member of the European Parliament spoke out against the lack of transparency in vaccine deals, which he says is a threat to democracy. NTD's David Vives has the details.
In Europe, the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine is the most widely used by far. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on October 18th that the EU shares the same objective as President Biden regarding the global vaccination rate.
Therefore, together with President Biden, we aim for a global vaccination rate of 70% by next year.
To do so, the European Commission signed a third contract with BioNTech Pfizer on May 20th. It reserved an additional 1.8 billion doses on behalf of all EU member states. But as disputes over vaccine mandates continue in the European Parliament, some lawmakers are asking for transparency. Last week, MEP Christian Terres held a press conference saying the Parliament is stripping away people's fundamental rights over a vote to extend the Green Pass bill. Terres said he faced pressure when trying to get access to the contract signed between the pharmaceutical companies and the EU Commission. He says it shows a total lack of transparency of the contractual terms.
This is unheard of. And I will just show you the pages. These are the pages. You see?
They call this transparency these days.
So this is the fundamental principle, right, of democracy. I'm asking you guys, is this transparency? Do you see anything? Because we don't.
The lack of transparency was also detailed in a report by US-based advocacy group Public Citizen. The report claims to uncover several unredacted Pfizer contracts which allegedly show how the company bullies governments into silence. An example mentioned in the report was the Brazilian government, who complained that Pfizer's terms were unfair and abusive, but eventually complied and signed the contract. The contract, which was leaked on Twitter in August, included a non-disclosure provision forbidding the Brazilian government from making any public announcement concerning the existence, subject matter, or terms of the agreement. Meanwhile, Pfizer third-quarter revenues this year reached $24.1 billion, according to the company's CEO. That's an operating growth of 134%. David Vives, NTD News.
Astronomers are trying to figure out how a hole that's 250 light-years wide punched its way into the N44 Nebula. This glowing cloud of gas and dust is filled with stars of different ages, But look at that big hole of blackness the Hubble telescope uncovered. Scientists call it a superbubble. They think it may have come from stellar winds, though wind velocities inside the bubble don't support that idea. Another theory is an exploding star carved it out, sort of like a cosmic cavern. Researchers did find a remnant of a supernova in the hole and say that based on the 5 million year age difference between stars at its rim, multiple chain reaction star-forming events are likely. Still, we should be pretty safe from those explosions, and 44 is 170,000 light years away from Earth. Now let's take a look at an unprecedented painting collection. It laid the foundation for one of Germany's most significant museums, and now, 200 years on, parts of the collection are once again going on display. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
This is Virgin and Child Enthroned with Four Saints by the Italian Renaissance painter Davide Ghirlandaio. It was painted for a monastery in Florence at the end of the 15th century. For several hundred years it was largely forgotten, until it became famous in Berlin in the 19th century.
It is a work from Florentine from the early Renaissance. In the time around 1800, it wasn't really highly regarded, but then all of a sudden it became seen as an ideal model for the history of art by the artists at the time. It was considered a template work, so to speak.
The painting by Ghirlandaio and over 3,000 other paintings were collected by English merchant Edward Solly during the 5 years that he lived in Berlin. And the whole collection was sold to the Königliches Museum in 1821.
Edward Solly was foremost a merchant. He traded grain and wood in the Baltic Sea area, that means from Russia to England. He was English, but he lived for several years in Danzig, and then in Berlin. He was in Berlin for about 5 years, and on the side, he collected art and sold art. He started as a collector and then also started trading.
Out of the 3,000 works, around 700 were significant enough to be placed in the museum's collection. Over the years, the Königliches Museum became the Gemäldegalerie Galerie, but the Solly collection is still the heart of the museum.
It was one of the cornerstones of the founding of the museum here, the Gemäldegalerie Gallery, and it was very lucky that it was purchased. It is really part of the character of the Gemäldegalerie Gallery Museum that has been extremely influential and really one of the highlights here.
Solly kept most of the paintings in a house that he owned in Berlin. There were paintings everywhere, from the ground floor to the attic. The exhibition, the Solly Collection, opened on November 3rd and runs through January 16th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Christie's jewelry department announced that Marie Antoinette's diamonds will be up for auction in Geneva starting next week. It's estimated that the jewels will sell for between $2 and $4 million, but they may fetch a far higher price. NTD's Chenny Wu has more.
Marie Antoinette, who is said to have spoken the famous phrase, "Let them eat cake," was known for her lavish sense of style. Next week, her diamond double bracelets will go under the hammer in Geneva.
To find jewels with over 200 years of French royal history is truly something that collectors and passionate jewelry people from all over the world will be keeping an eye on. How much is someone willing to pay for something from the last Queen of France?
The bracelets consist of more than 100 diamonds, and it's estimated they will fetch at least $2 to $4 million. They are currently the property of a European royal family.
Really, they've never left royal hands. This is a piece of French history that has remained within those families for more than 200 years.
The diamonds are extremely rare, and Christie's expects fireworks to surround the bidding.
Pink diamonds are exceptionally rare. To find even a 1 carat pink diamond is already 1 in a million. We do not know of another one on the market, and that's why we're expecting, strong bidding for that. The quality of the workmanship still today is superior to a lot of the things that we see made in the modern world, so it really is very exciting.
The auction will begin on November 9th. Chenny Wu, NTD News.
Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Before you go, here's something you should know. Don't forget you can catch all of NTD's programs on television. NTD Business premieres live Mondays through Fridays at 5 p.m. We broadcast to many of your favorite platforms, Apple TV and Roku, for example. We're also rapidly growing on cable, satellite, and over-the-air all across the United States. Just go to ntd.com/TV, type in your zip code, and find all the ways you can watch NTD.